Abby.
Hello.
Are you excited to talk about content?
So excited. One of my favorite things to talk about.
Like, when are you not excited to talk?
Also, that's true too, right?
All right, so you and I have known each other for, I don't know, 3, 4 years now, and you are known for content strategy, specifically as it relates to social media and LinkedIn.
Yes.
But between the some of the client work that we've done together and some of the marketing roundtables that we've hosted together, content is near and dear to your heart.
Yes, absolutely.
So I thought, what perfect topic for us to cover about how can we take a very strategic approach with 2026 starting of how we're creating content so it's actually useful for us throughout the year.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think so for me, like when we talk about content, right? And especially on social media, for me, like what I get most excited about or what I love doing is helping people to determine, and even companies, like how they want to show up, right? And if it's their company brand or their personal brand, whatever it is, it's like, what is that, thing you're trying to be known for? And then how do you make sure that you're providing value through content and not just adding to the noise? I think right now, especially content is at a crazy time. I actually just yesterday read a HubSpot report that said 54% of long form posts are now generated by solely AI when it comes to LinkedIn. And post length, it was either the last year or like since ChatGPT started, I'm not sure, has increased by 107%. Right. So people are just
Really?
overwhelmed, right? And that's what I get excited about because it's how do we not post more, but how do we make sure that our content is being valuable, right? And adding value to our process and not just an item on our to-do list.
Yes, yes. Somebody was mentioning that they don't want to read content that you didn't want to write in regards
Yes.
to all of the really, really lengthy content that AI is creating for people. If you didn't feel like writing it, there's really no reason that I should spend my time reading it, which I completely, completely understand. So, the way that I was thinking about it, and this comes from my own experience, is content has a use in mind. We're not just generating stuff for the sake of generating stuff. For the
Hmm.
people that we want to be reading it and seeing it and viewing it, what do we want them to do about it? Like the framework that I frequently reference is the think, feel, do. What do we want them to think when they're reading it? How do we want them to feel as they're reading it, and what do we want them to do after, right? So if we don't know what that is, then we can't
Right.
create content that is actually useful. The story that I often tell to clients is, one of my previous roles was really into TV advertising. So the start of every campaign was how's it going to look on TV? But TV
Hmm.
was just half of what they were doing. So then
Yeah.
figuring out how to translate any campaign into things that are not TV was always incredibly challenging. So I would say the same thing goes for content. Think about how you're going to use it
Yeah.
before you come up with anything. Do you see that with your clients too?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I always talk about, so, the content process that I teach or the strategy, I focus on purposeful content. And when I say purposeful content, I don't mean like, oh, it has a meaning or it's meaningful to you. I think a lot of times people are using purpose a lot, in
Yes.
everything in life and all of that. But when we talk about content, I mean, what is the purpose or action, like you mentioned, that you want that piece of content to drive? Is it you want them to think differently? Is it you want them to understand a story so that they can better relate to you? Is it that you just want to be able to provide value and help them the top 5 ways to solve a problem, right? And
Mhm.
so really thinking like before you hit post or create any piece of content, it's what is the purpose of this content and does that align with what your audience wants to see, right?
Absolutely. Again, going back to AI content generation, when I set up AI LLMs for clients who are trying to use their tools for generating content, I always set up the workflow that the tool asks them all of these questions before it creates anything. Who is this for? What perception do we want them to build? What action do you want them to take? And what is the overall objective? Like, how are you going to measure whether this piece of content was successful?
Oh, I love that.
And
Yeah.
it forces both for the content that's going to be generated is going to be more accurate, but it forces the person asking for the content to actually think about it before
Yeah.
they get it something else that, Claude or ChatGPT spits out, and they just put it up on their blog or on their social media.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that. And I love that it makes them think differently then, right? Rather than like, oh, I'm going to create a post on this, and then they go create it. And it's fine to do that, but then stopping and saying, but wait, why do I want to create this? Why do I want to talk about this? What is that purpose that I'm trying to get use this for, right? What is it going to do for my brand? And then also help your audience too. I think the biggest thing I like to tell people is that if you're going to be posting something, and of course, like I specialize in social media, especially on LinkedIn. So when I talk content, a lot of times I am focused on the post and that type of nature. But I always say if you can Google it and find a similar answer, then we need to relook at the content, right? And the quickest fix to that is instead of, let's say you want to write a piece of content on like how to do something. Instead of how to, you simply just switch how I. And so then the how I becomes, okay, how do I do this? And even if it's the same type of framework that maybe if you Google how to do something, but if you switch it with how I, you're still following that framework, but you're giving your personal insights and experience and strategies that you use to follow those steps instead of just, more generic content.
Yes. And you kind of talk about how this reflects and supports your brand because you're absolutely right. One of the things that you taught me that I use all the time that says that the content that you're posting on LinkedIn needs to be something that is personal, something that you're passionate about, and something that is professional related, which
Yes.
means that I can't just say, here's how to do things. I need to be able to talk about it with authority. And when you structure your content in pillars or themes or types or whatever terminology you prefer to
Yeah.
use, these should be areas that you are comfortable owning. These are areas that you should have a passionate opinion of. These are areas that you should be very happy to just wax poetic for hours because you have personal expertise in that space.
Yeah, absolutely. And kind of my saying is if I put you on stage or in front of a room or gave you a microphone, whatever analogy you want to use, and you had to talk about something for 15 minutes straight, what would that
Unprepared.
topic be?
Yeah, and you need to be able to talk about it unprepared, right? This is not
Yes.
something that you have done your research and re-prepared. This is something that you should have lived experience in. So
Yes.
absolutely, that is a really, really good framework to talk about. The other element that I always use, that again you taught me, is the source content that you start creating, like your anchor content that is the beginning of all the posts and all of the blogs and all of the emails. It should be chunkable, right?
Yes.
Everything that you create should have repurposability. So that article can have, 3 posts about stats. It can have a success story relevant to it. It can have a how to infographic that can come from it. That repurposability is incredibly important because then you're just not constantly generating new content and filling in the void. But the way that you structured it also helped build the foundation of what should actually be included and what is good source content.
Yes. And I think a mistake a lot of people make is that when they think about content, they want to share everything all at once. Right. And so it's like this piece of content, and I'm guilty of this too, because I'm like, oh, well, it's relatable. Oh, I should add this in. And it's like every piece of content, it should serve kind of one purpose. And it doesn't mean that there's not elements that you can't mention or that goes with that. But if you think about like that kind of almost like a mind mapping, like you have this
Mhm.
post idea, right? And really think about that. And instead of going off on different lines and all of these other topics, really think
Yes.
about, okay, what's the core message? And then how do you create small like content pieces of content from that? And what we tend to do is put all of it in one. And then it's, we don't realize that we just spent all of this time creating a piece of content that could have been, you know, 15 different posts on different topics throughout your month.
But also think about it from the standpoint of the reader or the viewer or the user. I don't have time to read a post on 15 different topics, right?
Right.
Most people are scanning. Maybe they're doing a deep dive on something that is specifically relevant to them. So if
Hmm.
you're able to stay on topic and more concise and more to the point, giving them the choice to explore through the mind map where your internal linking would usually be
No.
the answer, Like if you're not constantly adding and then it allows it to be a lot more user friendly for people to actually want to read future content from you.
Yes. And I mean, especially in social media, trying to get them to hit that save button or take an action like, oh, this post was interesting. And maybe if they don't know who you are, they click that post and then go to your profile, look at more content. And that's where some of those then additional ideas or from that kind of same theme, they see that. And that's how you kind of start to build that credibility, versus thinking about just like, oh, this one thing I'm going to talk about and then I'm going to talk because you can have more than one pillar or category that you talk about, right? But what people tend to do is they try to think about that category as a single post and then they
Mm-hmm.
go to the next post so that if someone went to their feed, all of a sudden it's all of these big, big ideas, but it's not making sense, right? So really
Mm-hmm.
trying to group, or if you are going to focus on something, like, and I say practice what I say, or wait, what's that saying? Practice what I
What you
preach.
preach, yeah.
So I took a little break for myself, but here's also like the amazing thing about just social in general is that I took a break from posting for probably it's been about 3 months now since I've been consistent, but I'm still very active on the platform. I'm active in conversations that are relevant to my content topics that I want to talk about. I'm being tagged in comments and questions and even just that visibility from events that I'm at, and I get to add value there. And so just because I'm not sitting down and actually creating that content doesn't mean I'm also not feeding those content pillars that relate back to my overall brand, right? Because your content pillars shouldn't just be for social or for your website or for, your blog. It should really be about your entire brand, and that's for companies or for individuals.
So let's talk about content pillars
Yeah.
because you're absolutely right. A lot of people will treat each pillar as a post and then you kind of run out of topics. So you start a new pillar and a new pillar and a new pillar. But how many content pillars should a personal brand have?
I like to say between 3 and 5.
Is that the same for a like a brand?
Yes, because there's different elements of your life that you need to bring into it, right? So, when we think about, and I'll give you an example like a company, there's always going to be team and company culture that you want to share, right? So like that needs its own. But then there's also like the content that you help that you build for your customers, right? And that's going to be very different. So kind of three larger themes, if you will, and then developing different content topics underneath those is what I tend to think about it. So, like for an example, if one of my content themes or categories would be, I like to make fun names for mine when I do it. So like you don't have to do that, but it's under like my education, right? Education and value add, and it's the LinkedIn strategy playbook. Like that's what I named it, and within that, I have different topics that I talk about, but each one relates back up to basically LinkedIn
LinkedIn
strategy,
strategy.
insights, tactical frameworks, things that I bring to the table, specifically about how to execute on LinkedIn, right? And my audience for that is going to be B2B marketing leaders and sales professionals and business owners too. So individuals. So kind of three different areas there. And then I have like a purpose statement that goes with each one. So you have your theme of the larger umbrella. Then you have your topic of what that includes, which can be a little bit more
Mhm.
detailed, your key audiences for it, and then the purpose of what you want to achieve.
So let's talk about that purpose. Is that purpose that something that you reference when you create in that so that you can remind yourself what you're trying to accomplish? Or is that purpose a little bit more externally facing?
That's a great question because we also talked about purpose driven content, right? Of
Yeah.
like having it. So, what I would think about this, so my content themes, now for a brand, it might be different because other people in the organization might need to see them. But when I'm talking about my personal or for solopreneurs or just personal branding, I have my purpose statement written for what I want to achieve from
Okay.
it. So, for me, like establishing thought leadership in LinkedIn strategy to attract potential clients for my consulting services. So everything I should talk about in that LinkedIn strategy playbook are things that are unique to me, my insights on LinkedIn, my tactical frameworks, how I help clients, versus, I'm still going to post about LinkedIn updates and things like that, but that's not, that bucket that of that what that fits in. That's, so kind of thinking about it that way of like kind of what should this content do and how I want to try to add value to them is by trying to establish myself as a thought leader.
So that's LinkedIn specifically.
Yes.
When you create content, do you start on LinkedIn because that's your bread and butter and then repurpose from there, or where do you start?
I typically start with kind of like the main theme or idea and then figure out where does it fit in from there. Because there's like more personal content that I post on my LinkedIn account. I don't personally have a blog like on my website or anything like that, but if I did, that would be more of that anchor piece of content, especially for brands. Having that anchor piece and then that anchor piece then go out into multiple different posts. So for me, it's about what is the main focus of the content and then, or kind of that main piece, and then how do I break it out?
So from that standpoint, let's talk about themes. I know a lot of brands and a lot of we have specific themes that might last a month or 2 months that you want to focus on, just so that there's not complete ping ponging of topics and all of the elements kind of come together. But you should have robust enough variety of post, whether it's case studies, statistics, testimonials, how-to videos, how I stories, frameworks, etc., that kind of fit under that theme over a certain period of time. At least that's how I tend to approach it. Do you follow that kind of calendar-based theming as well, or is it a little bit more kind of timely and responsive based on what's happening in life?
So when I'm doing my planning, I do like to kind of follow that same process. And what I consider those are like more like campaigns, in a traditional marketing sense. So it's like it's under an umbrella, but it's a campaign or a series of posts around a specific topic that fits under a content pillar, right? So if I wanted to, let's say, talk about amplifying your LinkedIn profile, for example, like that was my big thing. And there's so much I could talk about there. The benefits, what it does, tips, sections you can do. And so then I would maybe focus on, okay, so if I wanted to start sharing content on optimizing your LinkedIn profile, right? I would try to then rotate. I would say, what's something unique that I bring to the table about the way people think about their profile and how I have them strategically set up their foundations and framework. That's like one, right? But then there's also, okay, how do you use the featured section? What are some unique ways that people are using their featured section? That's a post in itself. But I don't want to post about that, just profiles all of the time. So I would do like a mini campaign sprint of that kind of had all of my ideas. And then also, if you do that, then kind of like you mentioned to that month, they're grouped together so that people then can go see, right? And then it's not that, because if I did that over a year, well, that'd be kind of hard to like go find all of those at one time. So yeah, that's kind of how, yes, that's kind of how I think about it.
And then within that campaign sprint, sometimes you go off topic because life goes off topic, or at least that's what I tell my clients. Point is, you stay on theme, let's say 70% of the time.
Yes.
And then the other are your culture content, is your we won an award content, is your here's a thing that is relevant because of what's happening in our market content. You need to save room for those because there's always going to be something you're going to need to add in. If you can fit it in under the theme, fantastic. But sometimes you're going to need to have a sprinkle of random just because we can't predict everything in life.
Right. So what I like the way I kind of approach that, so similar, but instead of calling it, like leaving a room, what I do when working with, especially individuals, is think about, okay, what percent of your content do you want to fit into this bucket versus another? So for example, if I know that 40 or let's say 40% of my content I want to be focused on, LinkedIn strategy. Then another 30% maybe is another kind of theme that I have or bucket is the B2B social media reality check. So that's where I'm kind of like I'm kind of that quick wit, like, here's what you should know, and this is what people get wrong kind of attitude. They kind of have their own attitude, but I don't want to talk about that all the time. So then I have a goal of how much for that. Yet I have two businesses, right? So I still need to focus in on like my community driven, right? And we know that community post and things celebrating also get more engagement, right? And so thinking about how I still fit that in a valuable way, I think is the key. And I don't want to only just be talking about the events I'm going to or what I'm doing, but like that's where then, so I try to, when I'm planning out my content, let's say for like a month or even for a quarter, I'll kind of look at kind of those ideas and see what I have coming up on the calendar, like things I know I'm going to want to talk about. And that way, then I know if I am really heavy, let's say in the month of March for events, right? Then I know I need to balance probably the month before that a little bit more with some of that tactical strategy type post.
I love that, because you should know at least some of what your upcoming months look like so you can adjust that mix.
And
All right.
also it can be guidelines, right? Like there is no, you have to exactly follow this process. Because also if you get inspired and feel like writing about something, you should. It should just fit within like your personal brand persona of who you are and, the value add, what you bring to the table, all of that that helps your brand. Like it shouldn't be so off that it doesn't make sense. But I'm a fan of when something inspires you to like just go for it and adjust as needed.
It's okay to go off topic. It's not okay to go.
Yes, I love that. Yes.
Absolutely. So let's talk about, right, this is content in terms of content we publish. You brought
Yes.
up an incredibly good point in terms of engagement and community for LinkedIn specifically. Again, that's your bread and butter, but there's plenty of other community spaces
Yeah.
where engaging with your audience is. How do you organically repurpose the content and the themes that you have made into those conversations?
Yeah. So I have a few different ways. So for example, for my LinkedIn kind of pillar, if you will, I make sure that I create a custom news feed of all of those, LinkedIn experts that I would say, and join in the conversation on their content, right? Setting up feed and looking for people posting about LinkedIn questions that I can go add value to. So that's kind of one way, and that's inserting yourself into the conversations of those that you might not know, or may just for the visibility of the comments. And then there's also like the community aspect. So for that kind of pillar, right? It's the people that I, know and celebrate, and they celebrate me. And I make sure that I'm engaging with their content too, right? And, adding value where I can and thinking about it that way too. So it's really about, how do you also help other people by reading their content, engaging with it, adding value in the different kind of content areas that you have.
Completely with you. And I think the topic of value add is really important.
Mhm.
Things that I talked about with my clients is that when you are in those conversations, your addition needs to be an addition. It can bring value to you as well, but it can't be self-promotional. It needs to add to the conversation. It needs to
Yes.
continue the conversation. So when you have, for example, created a guide to use your topic on LinkedIn frameworks to uplift your profile. When you're answering a question or when you're in a thread, don't just link to your guide. Pull
Oh, right.
out a
Yes.
snippet from your guide that is helpful to this particular conversation and give that content away free to continue the conversation, and then it can help build the reputation, and then it can help support the brand that you're trying to promote and the perception that you're trying to promote and bring people to you. Because when you're out there, you're not trying to pull people out of those conversations into your space. You're trying to add yourself and your brand into the conversation.
100%. I'm a huge advocate of not being promotional, especially when you're trying to add value, and even more so on somebody else's content, right? There was a time, this was a few months ago, so I basically got tagged in a post that somebody had, and I didn't know the person, but I knew the person who tagged me, right? And I was like, oh, okay, I'll take a look and see. And did I probably spend a little bit too much time? Yeah. But I was so intrigued by this question about like their content performance, and they were asking like, kind of broadly, like what's going on with LinkedIn. And so I went to their profile and I like went into the comments, I looked at the value of it, and I came back with like this whole, like, I'm like, all right, this is going to be long, brace yourself. And I gave a whole analysis of it, right? And like I had so many people like enjoy reading that or get value from that then it actually then turned into someone reaching out and saying, I saw your comment on this, like, would love to talk to you about coming into my company. And like, that's how it happened. Like, I didn't do that to try to get someone, oh, hey, by the way, if you ever want training on this, hit me up. It was more of like I want to help this person solve this problem. They're trying really hard on LinkedIn. I want to help them succeed.
Absolutely. So bring value first, and then the goodness will come from.
And even that with commenting in general, like be a human, right? Like be a human. And if you would never walk up to somebody and say, like at a networking event, congratulations, and then just walk away about that. Like, heard you got a new job.
I would, but that's because I'm awkward. But yes, you're absolutely right.
Like, you would never do that. So it's like, why are we showing up that way? And I know LinkedIn, and this is any social platform, some of them they have like the AI generated, like say congrats. And then you have a feed full of people just like hitting that one button. And not that that's, not okay. So it's okay sometimes, sure. But like, I'm also like, be a human. Like, if you know the person and they got a promotion or say something, like act like you would like text them or give them a phone call or see them in person. Like, what would you say to them versus just congrats with a little celebratory emoji?
So, what's your opinion on using AI to generate?
Oh, for comments?
I'm not talking about just like one click congrats, but saying, okay, there's this post. I want to comment, including some snippets from this particular framework. Have my ChatGPT, my Claude, my Perplexity, whoever you're using, create that snippet, and then using that. Do you support that? Is that human enough?
I would say so. It's a fine line, and I am a little bit. I embrace AI by absolutely.
Yeah.
But I also am a huge advocate of like, let's keep social and personal and real. And there are so many tools out there that you can like cheat the system with, right? When that happens, the system always kind of picks up on it because guess what? As people create tools and they get smarter, so does the system, right? So I think it's okay. Like if you really wanted to do a thoughtful post and you're like, this is like, I know what I want to say, but it's just not like formulating correctly. Like text that or even voice memo it into ChatGPT and be like, hey, this is a comment. Here's the context of the post. This is what I'm trying to say. Write me a thoughtful comment that's like concise and clear. That's okay because you're telling it, right? Now, there are tools out there that people are using that are like linked to your social profiles and find you conversations and then like literally within one thing, they write the entire thing for you. And people are just going through and doing that. I'm like,
I'm seeing those comments in my feed, and you can tell.
yes, 100%. And so I think social platforms are doing a good job of trying to monitor that. And I mean, because technically third-party tools like that are not allowed on specific
They're against the terms of service. Yeah.
Yeah, yep. And so like, can you fly under the radar and maybe be fine? Yeah, maybe, probably depend. What was that big one that just got shut down and all of the Apollo, maybe?
That was a while ago, but yes.
Yes. But something like that where people invest so much and then have so much connected to it, and in a heartbeat it can be gone because you didn't read the terms and services, right? And so I always err like at the side of caution for that. Like use it to help you, but make sure it's still your own ideas and you're not trying to just cheat the system, if you will.
Yes. Yes, absolutely. Okay. I'm looking at time, so I want to be respectful. Two final topics. The beginning of 2026, you're a VP of marketing. You are part of your initiative this year is to be more intentional with content. Where do you start?
I would start by building out, well, one, it's building out your personal brand strategy, right? Because it all has to connect to something bigger. From there, once you know that and you know why you're spending time on platforms, it doesn't matter if it's TikTok, social, or Instagram, LinkedIn, it doesn't matter. You need to know your why that you're on the platform and what you're trying to achieve. From there, then when you think about the content perspective as just like one piece of the pie, I start with kind of building out kind of do the same process, but using your foundations or what I like to call content DNA. So this is really to identify like what is your most value that you can bring through content. And you ask yourself like a series of questions like your expertise zone, credibility and experiences you want to bring to the table, passion and interest you want to talk about, and then what value you're going to bring to your audience. Because each platform should be different, and you can't be everything. Even if you're the VP of marketing, you do all these things, there needs to be some type of focus, a lane or an area that you want to really focus in on for a specific platform. So you kind of figure out what that content DNA is, right? And then you go into, okay, so now how do I take this and put it into 3 to 5 core categories or themes? And you do that, and making sure they map to your business goals, and then go to, okay, under these, what are those kind of core topics that I'm going to consistently talk about, right? And that right there is kind of that content strategy. And then how you'll show up. This is a piece that a lot of people miss. They kind of start something, they want to be more active, it's a goal, but they don't put the foundations in of like what that looks like. And so I always have people, I always say, make sure you know, like, okay, what are your key formats that you're going to commit to? Maybe it's text only. Maybe that's all you have time for. That's okay, right? Maybe it's adding an image here or there, but making sure that you know, maybe it's video. Maybe that is a goal that you want to be more active on video. So selecting those kind of post format or how you'll show up. I like to make sure that I have like kind of a bank of ideas of my posting style so that you're not always starting from scratch. And then the goal of the cadence. So that's always like, you have to have a strategy and a plan anytime you want to achieve something. And so that's kind of the foundational framework that I always, walk people through when they're trying to get more active. But I also always say, like, content is a small piece of the puzzle. And exactly, especially on LinkedIn. And actually, if you were to tell me, hey, I'm going to get really good at content this year, and I said, what's your goal? And you're like, yep, here's my content strategy, here's my plan. And that's the only thing you're activating. And you're not using the other elements of, like, especially on LinkedIn, what they want you to do, you're not going to see success. You're going to be talking like a billboard to your audience, and you're not going to see success. And so really it is a larger picture, and your content should just be a piece that amplifies some of your unique ideas and expertise.
In agreement completely. The other thing that I would add is to a realistic expectation of how much time content is. Because good content should take time. Bad content takes time. So if it's going to take time anyway, let's make it good content. So even if you are introducing AI into 75% of your content creation journey, it's still going to take time. So thinking that you're going to squeeze it in between meetings every now and then is not going to happen. Blocking off dedicated time for content creation, for strategic engagement on your calendar is absolutely required. If you're looking at it through the team, think about whose job, whether it's 20% of their job, 50% of their job, is going to be creating and repurposing that content, because it's not something that you can just add on top of an already full plate, because it's not going to work.
Right. And especially if you're a VP of marketing you have the, for a company, you have your personal brand, but then also you need to figure out how you're going to be supporting the company and that content and the strategy behind that, right? So you kind of have two different pieces of that. And I think the planning is key in setting aside kind of that time. Otherwise, you just end up with, I mean, I can't tell you how many notes I have right now in my phone of different post ideas that are half written, I was going to get to. And that's what happens, right? You get inspired in the moment, you make a note of it, but then if you don't set time to come back to it, like
it just sits in your nose. I have a whole wall of like a folder of content ideas notes that some of them are from 2 years ago. I don't even know if they're relevant anymore, because you just don't get to them.
Yes. And on the reverse side too, just because you have an idea and you feel inspired, don't go rush to post it. Like, that is the biggest thing. Like, so many people are like, I just attended this event, I'm going to go attend this. Like, I need to get a post out about it. And it's like, okay, hold on. If you waited maybe just a day, one, that event still happened, so it's fine. And then if you had time to actually sit down and think about like the value you took away, what you want, like people you can recognize and tag people in, and be really purposeful about that, it doesn't matter if you post a week later. That post is still going to be the same value as if you would have gotten to it that same day. I think sometimes people get in this rush that they get this idea and they think they need to just push it out, and there is no rush like that. So that's a huge thing is, make sure.
This is going back to the why. The
Yeah.
why of the post isn't the fact that you attended an event. Nobody cares that you
Yes.
attended an event.
Yes.
The why of this post is either around community, where you tag people and you talk about the benefit this event brought to the community, or sharing knowledge that you learned, where you need to be able to concisely explain the takeaways that you had from the event. You need to think about what you're trying to accomplish with that post, and that's always going to take time. So yes,
Yeah.
that nobody cares about the fact that you went to an event. You're trying to use that as a vehicle to deliver information that is on brand.
And if you did not take anything away from the event, then write a post about why you think you wasted your time and you need to prioritize your time more, right? You don't have
Controversial is going to work.
yeah, like, it's really that's what you have to think about. And on the topic of events, can we please put a PSA out to companies to tell them to stop creating posts for their sales professionals to post that talks about the conference they'll be at with the booth number and a logo on it. Biggest pet peeve. I'm like, nobody cares that you're going to this conference. Your company logo is going to be there and no one's going to remember your booth number. So let's think differently about that.
Again, what is the point? If
Yeah.
you're the audience and I'm seeing this, tell me why I should care to find you. I will find you if you give me a reason.
Yes.
But because this particular person that I happen to be tangentially connected to on LinkedIn posted an image with the logo and the booth number is not a good enough reason for me to find you at a busy conference. Completely.
Right. Unless,
Completely.
I did see one time a company, this is when I was in the cryptocurrency blockchain world, and it was like a money grab. That I'm interested in. If I can go grab money for free, tell me exactly where to
Yes.
find you and then give me
Yes.
directions and actually just a video of how to get there because then I'm interested. But yeah, it's like why are we sharing this, And again, it's a checklist. That's what it is. They do it because this is the way we've always done it. Same with holiday posts for companies. Happy holidays from this company. Great. Yes, that can be, happy pen day, happy cat day. There's so many. Like we need to, especially corporate, I say connect it back. And
And
this
if it
kind of,
doesn't connect, don't post it.
yes. And this gets a little bit, maybe some different opinions, but even for like the main holidays, like I say, for Veterans Day, what value are you adding by just putting a generic stock photo with your logo on it? Connect it back to those
Guys,
that are
support the veterans.
yes, and it's like,
Great.
how are you doing that? Right? So it's thinking about, okay, how can we bring in actually the people behind our in our company? How can we highlight and tell their story? How do we make it more personal? All companies are like, we really, want to emphasize our culture and community and all of this, then show it, right? And a generic stock photo with a
Yes,
logo.
generic stock photo with an American flag saying Happy Veterans Day is not showing your culture. Or if
Yes.
that is your culture, then people are going to stay away.
Yes, yes. And so those are my two. The conference photos and then the stock holiday photos with no other intention behind that are my biggest pet peeve that I'm like, we need to kick this for social media. I don't know why it started, but we need to get rid of it.
I love it. Okay, well, now that we've documented your pet peeves and some guidance for people for 2026, any last.
Yeah, I would say most of the time when I'm working with people, when they think about content, and I'm going to go specifically, LinkedIn or social media here, they start with the question of what to post, what should I post, and when should I post.
Okay.
And I always try to challenge. Let's start not with what and the when. Let's start with the why, right? Why are you posting? And really start to focus on how do we think about it like that versus what do I talk about? It's like, why are you posting? And then we go into what that looks like and how it's going to help your brand so that you're not just out there doing a checklist and that you're actually adding value over time to either your company, your personal brand, or whatever it is. So that is my biggest thing. Don't just do it because you think you should. Figure
Yes.
out why you're doing it, how you're going to measure it, and the impact you want it to see for your brand is the biggest thing I'm bringing into energy. I'm bringing into 2026.
I love it. I love it. Well, thank you. This was super fun.
Yeah, I liked it.
I think people are going to find this very useful.
I haven't done like a hit round like this for a while, so it's kind of fun.
It is really fun. All right. Well, very good to see you. Enjoy the snowy weather.
Yes. Okay, sounds good. We'll talk to you later.
Talk to you later. Bye.
Bye.